And oftentimes, when we want to change, we are drawn to those people who have already changed, and we have a look into their lives. Perhaps in the search of that missing ingredient, we listen to stories about how people have transformed their lives in an attempt to be inspired. In my case, in my circle, and the people I've been around and the place I live in, is the typical rags to riches story that you keep hearing. Making it out the ends, leveling up, leaving the hood, from a council estate to a penthouse, from the projects to the boardroom, from the ghetto streets to the hotel suites. We hear these stories time and time again, and we see it in the form of poor athletes becoming wealthy. Just to give you a quick example, let's have a look at one of my favorite basketball players of all time, LeBron James. LeBron James was born in 1984 in Akron, Ohio, to Gloria James, a 16-year-old single mom. His father had an extensive criminal record and wasn't involved in his life. He never met his father. He had all the odds stacked against him. Life was a struggle, and he and his mom would move from apartment to apartment in the projects. And I live in the UK, so the projects, it's like the equivalent of a council estate. So if you've ever lived in a council estate or you've been on a council estate for some time, you know how it is.
How did you stay away from projects? When you think projects, I know projects from New York. You think gangs and drugs.
Right. I didn't stay away from it.
You did it?
Because I lived in it. And when I say I didn't stay away from it, that didn't mean I was associated with gangs or I was associated with drugs. But when you live in the projects and you live in those circumstances, there's nothing that you can't get away from it.
So he went from that to making millions at a young age and taking his family out of that situation through hard work, perseverance, and the ability to change. And now his mom doesn't have to worry about moving from apartment to apartment. Maybe from going to resort, but she doesn't need to worry about that no more. And now let's travel to Portugal in the year 1985, when a boy by the name of Cristiano Ronaldo was born. Cristiano, growing up, was very broke. His father didn't even own a car.
I guess, how many cars did your father have when you were 5?
Yeah, small cars, yeah, many.
Okay. Toys, but did he have an
toys.
actual car?
No.
He didn't even have a car.
And now that he's the Cristiano Ronaldo that we all know, Mr. CR7, Mr. Sue, Mr. I'm the best player in the world, the GOAT. Now that he's become that, he doesn't even know how many luxury and high-end cars he has.
How many cars do you have right now?
I don't know.
Yeah.
He doesn't even know he's that wealthy. And now, let's jump into one of my favorite sports, boxing, where you'll find arguably the greatest defensive fighter of all time, with an undefeated record of 50-0. Like him or hate him, he went from being dirt broke to becoming Money Mayweather. And the examples I've given are very materialistic, and I've focused on money because whilst I don't believe that money shows any type of success, you can be broke and be successful. Even if we just look at Islam, Fir'aun, he had a lot of wealth, but by no means was he successful. So I don't mean to say that by changing and becoming wealthier, you've made it. I don't mean that, but the thing about wealth is when you go from being broke to having money, there is no denying that. It's very measurable, is what I'm trying to say. So by giving these examples, whilst I've focused on something which is I believe in the long term isn't that meaningful if you don't use it in the right way in terms of wealth. But it's clear that that person or these people, they've been able to change. And that's what I'm trying to focus on. Change. Because change in itself, I believe it's a skill. To be able to adapt, to be able to move forward, to be able to say, no, I don't want to be like this anymore. I don't want to be around these people anymore. And to actually follow through with that. That's a skill. And that's what these people have acquired. And that's why I use it as an inspiration. Or we hear change in the form of poor migrants traveling across the globe in the search for a better life. The American dream. Anyone, as long as they work hard, can have the American dream. You can have that white picket fence with a big front yard. Or we hear it in the form of the gangster, drug dealer, the guy that was doing fraud, that turned his life around and left the streets and never looked back. Or we hear it in the form of the criminal who goes to jail, but when he comes out, he doesn't ever return. He reforms. Even though I don't agree with the system at the moment, forget the system. He himself he reforms himself. Forget the system. He reforms himself. He changes himself, and he doesn't ever return to crime. He never returns to prison.